Our first reader of the evening is Lynn M. Hansen. And we're so lucky to be able to celebrate Lynn's book along with her and to celebrate Lynn along with her book. This book is a memoir in verse and captures all the humor and joy as well as the heartache of a life lived with eyes and mind and heart wide open to the world. Lynn was the first woman to be hired by the NJC science departments, and her love for the natural world that made her strive to break that barrier also turns up again and again in her poetry. Her love for the natural world sings through her work, and her love for people sings through her work as well, truly making her writing wonderful to read, and perhaps, because she is Lynn, even more wonderful to hear. Please help me welcome Lynn M. Hansen.
Well, thank you all for coming. I'm so excited. I've been all excited all day, could hardly do much of anything except think about this. So thank you for coming. It's so nice to see all of my friends. I mean, I've got a lot of friends and lots of them aren't even here. So there you go. If they were, I don't know where you'd be. This book couldn't be possible without the help of Lillian Vallee and Sam Piersdorf, who were really very instrumental in my putting this together and biting the bullet and trying to get it published. And I'm just thrilled. Linda Gordon Sawyer is the artist for the cover, and she did a fabulous job. I gave her a complete artistic license, and this is what came up. So she and I are now both published, and we're thrilled about that. I told her, you know, royalties are going to roll in, be ready. So we'll see. Anyway, and also most of these poems got their first readings and visibility through being published in local venues such as Song of San Joaquin, Hard Pan, and the Connections, Stanislaus Connections. And I really appreciate those opportunities to publish things in my own community. So I'd like to begin with a poem called How We Come In. And this poem was inspired by a reading by Lee Herrick, who had a very interesting beginning and was adopted as a Korean orphan. And I began to think about that a lot, and I read this, and I read it one time when he was here, and he was so gracious and gave me a lot of positive support for this poem. So here it is, How We Come In. When life begins breach, things are upside down. The first breath is a challenge, slippery umbilical cord prevents lifeline from becoming a chokehold. Then comes the cry of emergent life. Such a birth is not as dangerous as when life begins in isolation, on the doorstep of a church, on the floor of a public restroom, in a box at the police station, where survival depends on the goodness of others, driven by the dependence of the infant whose only voice is a cry. Those attending have the language to tell the story or keep the secret. It's no mystery that I was born breech, and that could explain a lot about my life, actually, coming in backwards. Oh well. The other person that I really appreciate very much, and here's Mr. Piersdorf and Rui and Amina, there they are. Give them a hand. They've really been helpful. See these bookmarks? That's Rui. See this book cover? That's what's his name? Sam. See this shirt? If you want a shirt, see Sam. There you go. At any rate, the other person that was very instrumental in my upbringing was my grandmother. I probably wouldn't have made it past 5 if it weren't for her, because she was just foundational for me. So I've dedicated this entire book to my grandmother. And this next poem is called Preschool. Preschool was Grandma's kitchen, warmed by blue flames, licking edges of shiny coal in the corner cook stove, where canaries sang until their cages were covered. I sat on thick Sears catalogs stacked on a chair, pushed up next to a square wooden table. Scissors in hand, I would begin by cutting letters, words, pictures, mining a steady supply of reed-worn magazines, Saturday Evening Post, or Look. For hours, I carefully arranged the pieces on pages of an old wallpaper sampler book, now turned into a scrapbook of language. I made sticky flour and water paste to glue my collections of images. The words and letters that I chose became the lesson of the day. Grandma would review my handiwork, sound out the words or letters with me, smile at my selections. She was great. She was wonderful. She let me make mud pies and put them in her stove, in her oven. I mean, my mother would have died if I'd even suggested that. So. And I have never written a poem about my mother, but my mother is sprinkled through a lot of these poems, and this is one of them where she's sprinkled in a way that is somewhat, well, you'll see. Moment of truth. Oh, and my sister's here too. If you have a family, which you all have, there's plenty of stuff for poetry, trust me. And my sister was a rich area for that. Okay. Moment of truth. My 4-year-old sister loves her grandfather. He relishes time with her, having no female children in his family of 7 sons. I watch as she climbs into his thin lap, thrusts a large black comb into his fine Norwegian hair. First, she combs his gray locks to the left, then over to the right, then forward into his eyes. His scalp tingles from her attention. His eyes close in relaxation. After a few minutes, she puts down the comb, grasps his face between her tiny hands, and says, "Grandpa, my mama doesn't like you." "Oh," he says, "well, we'll have to do something about that." My sister resumed her hair grooming routine. Mother had nothing to add to the conversation. And then I grew up really poor. And even when I went to college, I don't even know how I got there, but somehow I did. But I never really had any money. Things just seemed to work out, and there were good people in the world that helped. This is entitled Class. This is about a first grade class when I was in first grade. And I went to a private school because my father thought it was really important, though we didn't live with him, that he was, wanting us to have a spiritual education. So this is entitled Class. In first grade, we read about Dick and Jane, who urged us to look, look, look. I did look. At recess, I noticed that other little girls wore long, white nylon stockings anchored by shiny patent leather shoes. My stockings were brown cotton, darned at the knee, walked in Buster Brown shoes. I noticed that each little girl with legs in white had a father who lived with them, kept them safe. And then, my sister and I are only 14 months apart, so I don't even remember life without her, actually. So, and hopefully I won't have to. Or maybe I'll go first. That's my plan. Anyway, in the summers, we used to have opportunities for kids to work, in the fields and in fruit and stuff. And she and I picked beans for 2.5 cents a pound in Oregon. What a drag that was. But, if you had 100 pounds of beans, you didn't make a lot of money, but you certainly worked all day. At any rate, in this area, it was cutting fruit. That's what we did. So this is a poem about that. It's called Summer Job at the Cutting Shed. And Nancy Maya can relate to that. Yeah, and a lot of other people here. As a small child, I always had a job. Set the table, wash dishes, clean my room, where I learned the meaning of perpetual. My labor was expected and free. The tooth fairy, my only income. At 12, flaunting a work permit, I wrangled my first paying job cutting fruit at the dry yard of Mr. Yamada. I considered the salary generous, 35 cents a box for apricots, 15 cents a box for peaches. Big money for a preteen. In the cool early morning air tainted with sulfur, work was fast. My sister and I stood over 40-pound lug boxes of plump orange apricots, little green marbles or dark orange mush, flashed our curved knives into fresh fruit, flipped the pits in the box, arranged each clean half on the long wooden trays like jewels in precise rows, no overlap. Done with the box, we yelled, "Fruit!" Got our card punched, and teenage boys brought another box of sweet-smelling fruit. When trays were filled, we yelled, "Tray!" and boys carried them off to be sulfured. The work was dusty and hot, bee stings were a liability, Sticky juice ran down our arms, staining our hands black. Peach fuzz made us itch. Tiny knife cuts etched our hands. On a good day, I could cut 12 boxes of apricots, even made $19.95. That's 57 boxes of apricots in 1 week. On my last payday, I rushed my money to the Anita shop, bailed out my layaways, 2 training bras, a black patent leather purse, 1 blue wool plaid skirt and matching Orlon sweater, a white poplin shirt, and 1 pair of navy capri pants. My harvest from a summer of fruitful labor. Well, you probably have heard that I used to teach science, biology at MJC, and I was the first woman hired there. I have to tell you that when I was hired, my colleague and office mate said to me, "I just want you to know I didn't vote for you." So that was how I got welcomed into the group. And I said, "Okay then, you know." Later he said he would vote for me, and I explained I really didn't want him to now, thanks anyway. But there was a counselor that I had who, when I told him I was going to be a scientist, he said, "Women just can't possibly do that. You should be, a secretary or a nurse or something, but you can't be a scientist." And that made me really mad. So and so I got to be a scientist instead. And so here's the poem about that, and it's called "Don't You Know." Women can't do science. They're not logical, don't you know? My counselor in '63 offered the only advice he knew. "You're only a girl," he said. And it struck in me a fire burning slow. Shattered by his thoughtless words, I dared not let my tremble show. Then a quiet voice inside said, "Girl, it's really up to you. Women can't do science. They're not logical, don't you know?" So on I went through college with science books in tow, took physics, math, and chemistry with lots of work to do. "You're only a girl," he said, and it struck in me a fire burning slow. Transcending a barrier I did not make was where I was to go. For the many women to follow, I made a pathway that was new. Women can't do science. They're not logical, don't you know? After 33 years of science, I had finally reached my goal. I'm now a science resource for more than just a few. "You're only a girl," he said, and it struck in me a fire burning slow. That comment from my counselor so many years ago serves as a reminder of a bias quite untrue. Women can't do science. They're not logical, don't you know? "You're only a girl," he said, and it struck in me a fire burning slow.
Yes!
It didn't help that I kept getting recruitment notices from the Air Force to be a pilot, and if I'd have shown up, they'd have said, "I'm sorry, sweetie, you're a girl." So I didn't want to do that, fortunately. As you know, those of you that are poets in this room, Gillian sends out these New Year Poetry Challenge things, and one time she sent on a picture of Medusa. And so, Medusa, I like her actually, and I studied Latin, so I got acquainted with her early on. And so I wrote this poem about the bright side of being Medusa. "Oh, Medusa, goddess in the temple of Athena, ravished by lustful Poseidon, made monstrous by jealous Athena, your anguished face belies your outrage. Take heart, consider your positive aspects. You are wise, your power will always be in your head. At the sight of you, everyone is stalked dead. You command attention. Your image drives off evil. It was you that saved Andromeda from Cetus, the sea monster. You will always have a full head of hair, alive and curly, and will never suffer joint pain or osteoporosis, since those parts of your body no longer exist. Your blood is life-giving. Because of you, we have corals in the sea, serpents in the desert, and our muse, Pegasus. A connection to the sacred, your image is both powerful and terrifying. You are an icon of female rage against the enslavement of women. You are a guide through our terror and anger into our source of power as women. Even in death, you are not vanquished." Yes, let's hear it for Medusa. And there's a poem that I just have to read tonight because my next door neighbor, Ilsa is here. And Ilsa is just the most charming woman in the whole planet. I mean, if you wanted a good neighbor, she would be it. She's from Latvia. And one day, her granddaughter posted a little note on her door, which this poem is about. So I'd like to read this. And the title of the poem is Omi. This is for you, Omi. Omi, for Ilsa. And the note said, Omi lives here. You are welcome to come in and play with Omi. The paper sign on the door said it all. An invitation written in the joyful hand of a 5-year-old invites the neighborhood, anyone who arrives at this threshold, to explore the backyard forest, eat figs from the garden, play hide and seek, sing songs, or giggle away the afternoon in the safety Omi provides. If you do knock on the door, a silver-haired woman in her 70s greets you with her warm Latvian smile. She is Omi, the one who fosters playfulness, generates treasured memories for those who enter her aura. Omi lives here. You are welcome to come in and play with Omi. Yeah, that's great. And then, let's see. Sometimes people, and I've spent a lot of time in volunteering in elementary schools with children and teaching science and getting to know the teachers, and honestly, they have a hard job. There are several of them right up here in the front row looking at me, so, and I'm so glad you're here. And sometimes you have students who have, special needs. Let me see if I can find it. Oh. And so this poem is about that, 96. And my niece is here tonight, Jenny, and Jenny is a special ed teacher, and so she's very familiar with this, and in fact knows who I'm talking about here. It's called Autism. He falls mute, looks down, stands paralyzed as his first grade classmates laugh. His jacket is missing. Teacher calls for his attention. He remains silent, perplexed, powerless. Tears flow down flushed cheeks from eyes that see what he cannot explain. He knows language, can speak, but thoughts become tangled. When he tries to express his feelings, tongue locks in confusion. He put his jacket on the hook. The other children, wide-eyed, oblivious to his pain, do not know what it means to be captive to themselves, unable to concentrate, unable to communicate, unable to come out. And then there are so many poets here that knew and loved Lee Nicholson, and so this is a poem that I wrote in memory of him shortly after his death a year ago. It seems like forever. There isn't one person in here who wouldn't die just to have Lee go, once you've read your poem. I mean, wouldn't you just love that? Yeah, I did. So he was very kind to me, and so this is called Another Kind of March Madness in memory of Coy Lee Nicholson. Wind, rain, thunder, hail rents through the fabric of heaven for you. A voluptuous moon throws her silver kisses toward earth with abandon. In celebration, the Furies swirl, call out your name. You hear their energy, smile in your death sleep as you return into fertile loam of earth skin to feed grasses. Mermaids emerge from their liquid castles, seaweed garlands draped over naked breasts. Muses appear out of onyx forests adorned in opalescent foxfire. All collect around you like angels, sensuous songs leaping from instruments, a boisterous welcome into your new realm. Trumpets blow, drums beat, voices chant. You, the Lion of March, exit stage left, leaving spring splendor, camellia cavalade, bursts of cherry blossoms, daffodils whose petals fade and join you in the sacred earthen sanctuary. For you are now free to dance, to mingle with Wilma, Emily, William, Sylvia, in flames of fireweed and wild revelry. So he was great. This poem has to do with an incident that I saw with magpies. And Billy Collins has a new book out called Bright Wing, which is a whole lot of poems about birds and then their pictures also. I recommend it. It's called The Magpie Tree. Atop a dead valley oak branch tangle sits a large stick nest woven by yellow-billed magpies. When tree trimmers arrive, chainsaws buzz, limbs fall, sending the canopied cradle and its nestlings into territory of hungry cats. As we gather each baby bird into safety, a squadron of magpies launches. Flying in formation like fighter pilots, dive bomb us, screaming a communal cacophony of alarm and protest. Throughout the day, we watch as hundreds of magpies assemble, their iridescent black tuxedos darkening the tree with grief. The incessant calls of magpie mourners continue, a funeral chorus for a wake that would last for days. They're pretty smart. This is my next to the last poem. This one is Wanderers. My husband and I went to the Antarctic region and we traveled the South Seas, the Southern Ocean, and you can't go there without seeing just every kind of albatross you can just about imagine. They're enormous birds and they just sail on those winds that are constantly present there. So this is called Wanderers for Ted. Oh, I will always want to see the albatrosses soar, watch tips of their long wings dip down along the sea, catching fierce circumpolar winds that make a roar, always on the wing, roaming wild, roaming free. Watching tips of their long wings dip down along the sea, up, up, up they climb on a pulse of wild, cold air, always on the wing, roaming wild, roaming free. Soon two will make a bond, form a reproductive pair. Up, up, up they climb on a pulse of wild, cold air. When stately male lands, thrust pink beak into the sky, soon two will make a bond, form a reproductive pair. Spread massive wings, each holds them up, up high. When stately male lands, thrust pink beak into the sky, nibbles neck, gives gawky looks and ecstasy displays. Spreading massive wings, each holds them up, up high. After nuptial consummation, an egg is finally laid. Neck nibbles and gawky looks, it is ecstasy displayed. Tussock grass and mud together form their stump-like nest. After nuptial consummation, an egg is finally laid. There are 13 months to fledging with oh so little rest. Tussock grass plus mud together form a stump-like nest. On the wing alone they gather squid from far away. There are 13 months to fledging with oh so little rest. We hope the long line hooks won't catch these birds today. On the wing alone they gather squid from far away, catching fierce circumpolar winds that make a roar. We hope the long line hooks won't catch these birds today, for I will always want to see the albatrosses soar. Acorn Dream. This is a poem in memory of Dr. Wayne Pierce. His wife Donna is here and several of his colleagues from CSU Stanislaus. And this poem is in memory of him. Acorn Dream. It began with an acorn, more precisely 300 acorns and one Turlock professor's dream, a transect through California ecosystems, scaled down and accessible. A stream and a meandering path surrounded by a corridor of native plants. And so he began planting. Each acorn threw off its rough cap, split its shiny chestnut hull, taproot digging deep into rich Central Valley soil to create a mini forest, a grove of 47 valley oaks, Quercus lobata. When his horizon fell dark, his dream unfinished morphed by others into a memorial project. Like the acorns he planted, his idea, deep-rooted in passion for learning, emerged as an anchor of beauty, gathered fertile soil of support, and formed a magical oasis stretching over 4 acres of the CSU Stanislaus campus, the Trans-California Pathway. The trail snakes upstream from the Valley Oak Grove through Chaparral Chenise and Foothill Blue Oaks, past Canyon Live Oak and Yellow Pine, ending at the foot of Mountain Hemlock. A living monument honoring the memory of a gentle man whose botanical dream shapeshifted into a perennial community gift. It began with an acorn. So. There's a plaque currently on the California State Stanislaus campus, and there's a young woman here that's responsible for having that put up. And she's here today too, and I can't think of your name. What is her name? Sarah Valentine, how's that? And we had a chance to read that poem on his, what would have been Wayne's 71st birthday, I think, wasn't it? Yeah. So, the last poem is the title poem of the book, Flicker. And Flicker is because it's one of my favorite, it is my favorite bird. And this picture drawn by Linda Gordon Sawyer is just a beauty. It's also a metaphor for the little moments in time that are captured in these poems. And so, Flicker. When day length shrinks from autumn's equinox, pomegranates blush, persimmons burn orange, and a loud signature note pierces morning quiet, announcing the arrival of the northern flicker. I startle at his sound, look for the camouflage speckled breast, black bib, barred back. I don't expect to see him this soon. Without clock or calendar, his return is a migratory miracle. In a flash of tangerine, he flutters down like a cluster of fall leaves before northern chill and bluster, his plaintive call summoning thoughts of winter. I shiver. So, thank you very much. After the reading, there's cake, so I hope you'll stay. I brought paper and plastic and whatever you need, so enjoy some birthday. This is my 70th birthday, so thank you.